Hello and welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Millie, and today I'm going to be showing you some comparison swatches of the two Adept Cosmetics palettes. This is the Plain Jane and this is the Ninhydrin. Now, I haven't done a video with this one yet, but it will be coming probably sometime this week. I will do 4 looks. I want to get this comparison up. Now, I already know I'm going to disappoint you with these because these were really hard to dupe, and that means a lot coming from somebody who has over 600 single eyeshadows. I honestly wasn't expecting it, but there are some shades, like you can see this one, ACI 2, ACI 11, ACI 18, that I had no shadows to compare to. So some of these are kind of similar, but you'll see in the swatches, most of these are pretty different. Now, the point of this video is not for you to go out and buy all these single eyeshadows separately, because of course that would add up to way more than the price of each of these palettes. None of these single eyeshadows have the same formula as these shades in the Adept palettes. For the most part, these are very slick and slippery. They're more like Super Shock shadows, while most of these are not. I would say maybe this shade, I believe that's Glam Shop or Burnovich. Those are really slick, so they kind of mimic the texture. But overall, this is a very unique formula. Some of these do swatch a little bit differently. So for example, ACI 21 and ACI 23 are a bit thicker and super pigmented, so they're not the same formula or seem to be as some of these other shades. Same with ACD 18. And actually, even the mattes I had trouble duping. I know in the viewfinder right now, they look pretty much the same, but you'll see in the swatches, they're pretty different. So it was even hard to dupe these mattes, but I think I got close enough. So what I would recommend is, if you know some of these are close enough to the shades that you were interested in from this palette, then you can get them. I would say I only have 1 or 2 exact dupes here. Everything else is kind of similar, but not exactly the same. So let's get right into the swatches. So starting with the Plain Jane palette, the first shade, you can see these are pretty similar, but Lucy is lighter. Then ACI 3 versus these two shades, none of them are really even close. Maybe the Sweet Lust, but these are all pretty different. This one was very hard for me to find an exact match for. Next up is ACI 4, and we have Sydney Grace Always Yours. And while these are similar, ACI 4 is more of like a duochrome. It has like a gold shift to it, while Always Yours doesn't. Next up, I would say this is the only exact dupe, and that's Divina Tucana and ACI 5. You can see they're almost exactly the same. Tucana is darker and also a totally different formula, of course, very sparkly. Next up, this shade, I didn't think it was going to be this hard, but Cream Puff Cuddles is the closest thing I have, and it's a bit darker, but I think there's some Cliona shades I don't have from the Glitter Multichromes that would match this. Next up, also thought that I would be able to dupe this one, but nope, Carving has just quite a bit more of a brown base to it, and also the shift is different, and Shuggies has a transparent base. Then we have Glam Shop, which this one has a more like grayish base or a more blue base, while ACI 8 is just more transparent. Except these are all pretty similar to each other. I would say Chronic Ailment is much flakier, but very similar, maybe a little darker. This one is pretty easy to dupe with Yumlix and Europa, I would say. Aura is just quite a bit more neon yellow in the shift, but very similar, very easy to dupe. This shade, ACI 12, just has like an orange peachy base to it, while the Burnovich shade is just straight up like a magenta pink, and also ACI 12 just has some sparkles running through it. So next, onto the Ninhydrin palette. Next up, these mattes, you can see Vintage is just not as plum as ACM 31, but I would say it's close enough. Next up is a shade I couldn't believe I couldn't dupe, but Solstice is close. It's just not as bright pink as ACI 18. ACI 22 is much more sheer. You could probably build it up with some like glitter primer or something underneath, but Centaurs is the closest from Divina to it. So then we have the other matte, and this one is a little bit darker, but I would say it's about the same tone. The shade was definitely harder to dupe, but Luxie's Dark Side of the Moon comes pretty close, but it is just a little bit different, as you can see, especially in the shift. ACI 19 is more green. Divina Puffles here versus ACI 20. This one also don't understand how it was so hard to dupe, because it is just a blue-purple shift, but it is much lighter. Next up, ACI 21 was really hard to dupe as well. It's really dark blue with a lot of silver sparkles throughout it, which I don't have anything like that. Next up, Menagerie Mimic definitely comes close, but it is just a little bit darker and it doesn't have a shift. ACI 23, again, super dark purple with silver sparkles throughout it. I don't have anything like it. Flannel is really the closest dark purple I have. Next up, this one I thought would be really easy because it is just your typical blue-green brown, but it is much more of a cooler tone brown, while some of these other shades have a warmer toned base brown, and Cliona has a blue shift compared to the other shades. This one also harder to dupe. ACI 25 has some sort of like a different base. It's still translucent, but it looks like it has like some sort of a brown base again. And so those are all the swatches. Like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, it was much harder than I thought, and I'm definitely pretty shocked, but I'm also glad because that means, but I have lots of beautiful topper shades on here, and these also really transform when they're layered on top of different mattes. So that's another aspect to keep in mind with these. Let me know in the comments below if you've purchased either of these palettes or do you plan on it, and don't forget to stay tuned because I will be doing 4 looks with the Ninhydrin palette. I already have 4 looks up with the Plain Jane palette, which I will link down in the description box in case you're interested in watching that. And if you enjoyed the video and you found it helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, I would love it if you subscribe. There's so much indie makeup content, lots of shiny, sparkly, and shifty eyeshadows already on my channel, and much more to come, so you don't want to miss out. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.